All right. Welcome, Hunter Hoinkes, to the Relationship Singularity podcast.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on. So Hunter and I are new friends. We met through Austin, Texas, Rationalist Discord, and Hunter had seen information about the Relationship Singularity website and was like shocked that it was one of the things that had been on his mind. Um, so do you want to introduce them a bit to yourself and also like how in the forefront of your mind was this concept when you came across
Uh,
it?
sure. Yeah. My name is Hunter. I'm a student at the University of Texas at Austin. Previous to that, I went to like a little high school in Texas called the Texas Academy of Math and Science. So it was like an early college program where I spent 2 years, my last 2 years of high school, taking college classes and doing college activities, living in a dorm and stuff like that. And so this kind of shaped my worldview into being more, I guess, like ahead in terms of like college stuff. And yeah, and so now I joined the Rationalist Discord whenever I got here to Austin this past August, and ever since then I've been kind of engaging myself with the effective altruist community here, forecasting and just AI alignment stuff in Austin. And what was the second part of your question again?
Um, Related to the relationship singularity, when you saw the
Yes,
concept,
yes.
how in the forefront of your mind was that?
Yeah, so it was actually very interesting. I had the like almost like one to one this exact same idea on the walk back from campus to my apartment. I kind of thought like, okay, I've been very interested in this idea of like the like word embedding spaces from ChatGPT. I feel like those are the like most interesting parts of just like LLMs in general, because like outside of that it's just like deep learning and just like I don't know, input output matching and like approximation stuff. Um, and I thought like, okay, this idea probably could be generalized to lots of other fields that might be more interesting. Finance, for instance, I like worked a little bit on a project where we were trying to embed like the differences between different companies, like their relationships in there to see if there was any kind of edge in that. But I kind of got sidetracked and found like other projects. And then very recently, like last semester, I would say in like October, September, something like that, I thought about like, what if we could embed like people's personalities as part of like some kind of embedding space vector, and then we can use that to match people to other people. And like whenever I saw the relationship singularity concept, and like I was exactly the same idea that I like thought of before. I thought, wow, this is like such a cool thing, and like while I didn't get a chance to like build it, I'm glad somebody is to
That's
see if it
amazing.
works. Right.
Yeah. Well, it's in the nascent stages right now, and yeah, it's still like unclear in like where this kind of stuff will be built and the degree to which nascent versions of it have already been built.
Hmm.
You can imagine like the TikTok algorithm already probably has a vector that represents your personality uh, that is like being learned over as it's trying to recommend you the next video to scroll through. So
Right.
it just hasn't been used for the purpose of like explicit personality representation, especially in a visual format.
Right. Right. I feel like one of the biggest challenges, I guess, to this, because previously one of my friends, one of my best friends back from Keller, where I'm from, she sent me this app called like Dimensional or something, where they're trying to do better like personality like tests and stuff like that to try to like better encode what kind of personality you have. Like anything better than the typical. Oh, you brought up some examples like previously in our conversations about like other types of personality tests, like
Yeah.
I think Myers-Briggs and maybe some other ones too.
Big
Um,
Five, the Enneagram.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. And so like I'm sure there's like lots of richness to be explored in like this whole area. Um, that just like hasn't been touched yet, and maybe we can get like a lot better like predictive qualities from like more accurate representation of personality than we currently do, because right now it feels like the state of personality tests is like mostly like pseudoscience and kind of yeah.
Well, you can imagine computer vision prior to 2021. Uh, a lot of the job was actually coming up with increasingly detailed taxonomies to represent the objects that were being classified. So you started with MNIST, and you had like airplanes, buses, dogs. And like if you got a data set where you're trying to say, okay, I don't need to just distinguish a dog, but for my use case, which could be who knows what, like checking which kind of pets are in different regions, having like an automated check-in service for like pet spa, whatever. There's like a use case where you need more detailed information than this is a
Right.
dog. You need to know it's a golden retriever or not. And so now suddenly you have people saying, okay, we need to go back through this data set of images, and we need to label this is a dog amongst like all these categories of things it could be. And then it needs, this is like a golden retriever, and then like list all the other possible species. But further, it's like actually this is a dog, but it's also an animal, a dog, a golden retriever. But then you start to get things like, oh, I want to do 3D reconstruction of this object, or I want to know which way it's facing. And so now I need to say this is an animal, dog, golden retriever that is oriented like 30 degrees this direction and like 10 degrees this direction.
Right.
And also I need to know that it looks about 8 years old. And like basically, if you want to like label things in a meaningful way, you need to add a new layer of taxonomy um, to that. But then, um, given that the ML model, each new layer is like a different bit that gets encoded, you need to add sufficient depth to every category you've done. So now you need to say
Right.
like there's like a vehicle, bus, oriented 30 degrees to the right. Like it becomes this combinatorial explosion, and this is what companies like Scale AI got popular on. 2020, 2019, 2018, Scale AI was like, we're going to outsource all this insane amount of taxonomic labeling of data sets out to like people in the world so that we can have ML models learn what ends up being like a many bit vector of this taxonomy, where it's like, is it
Right.
dog, vehicle, blah, 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 for the first bit, and then like what type of dog for the second, and then like what orientation for the third, and so on. And that became a vector. And then what happened in 2021 is CLIP came out. And CLIP was the contrastive language and image pre-training. And this paper said what we're going to do instead is no longer hard code vectors as taxonomies. We're going to allow the ML models to learn their own taxonomies and give them these addressable vectors that are initialized as like blank or random, and allow them to organize those vectors based on semantic meaningfulness in this high dimensional space. So like the dimensionality of the previous one was however many layers deep of the taxonomy you have.
Mhm.
So like animal, dog, well, that's like each one is like a dimension, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
so instead, what Clip did was it said we're going to take an embedding and like basically a model that can like turn any text label of an image into an embedding, and then we're going to take another model like a CNN initially, and then it became a vision image transformer, and like take these pixels and allow an embedding model to also turn those into an embedding. And then we're just going to organize these embeddings by having the text embedding be the nearest neighbor in this high dimensional space to this image embedding across the modalities. Because
Right.
obviously the nearest neighbor is other text, not the image, but across the modalities. And then in the self-organizing learning process, it sufficiently encoded, or it optimally encoded along these freely addressable dimensions, the semantic affordances that each thing goes along.
Right.
And this is kind of like how everything changed. And so in the same way, if you look at current um, personality science, it looks exactly like computer vision did prior to 2021, where you say, here's the big five, and it's like ocean, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. And then we have subfacets and they'll tell you all the list of those, and then they'll say, and then we have sub facets, and we have all the list of those, and it looks exactly like how it was prior to Clip. Clip just blows it out of the water because suddenly you get to learn what the truly optimal way to encode personality might be. And then you can discover like what essentially become eigenvectors for personality that are usually entangled with each other, where there's kind of like dimensions that co-evolve or like are correlated with each other. And so, yeah, you've probably seen some of this, like when you move along a single dimension in an image generation model, or like especially like for like making faces. That like
Right.
as the person starts balding, they might get like glasses as well.
Yeah.
Or if you
Yeah.
like lengthen their hair, they start getting earrings. And this is like
Yeah.
the dimensions are not disentangled, though. Now sparse autoencoders allow you to disentangle them as well. And so the point is that we're basically waiting on the Clip moment for human personality, and this can like change the game on personality science and personality predictions that are related to personality in the same way that Clip changed computer vision.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I. Right. It is exactly the direction we should be headed. Is like towards this more like high dimensional representation that encodes like a lot more information. And then you also have like reporting problems as well too with like Myers-Briggs and these ones, because whenever you have such wide buckets for so many different people, um, like their questions in order to select them are very like not rich, and so you can definitely do a lot more with like a clip style thing for personality tests. 100%.
Yeah. A common problem, for example, prior to Clip was if you have like a stuffed animal dog, is that a dog? Do you give that the bit that says dog or no? What if it's a
Right.
drawing of a dog? What if it's a human in a dog costume? Uh, like, what if it's a truck that is like in like a style of a dog? It gets, or a statue of a dog, but it's Cerberus. You know, it gets increasingly complex when you have hand labeled vectors rather than these kind of ML learned high dimensional embeddings, which kind of figure it out for themselves if you just give them a training task and allow them to figure out, you know, what vectors they need to represent information to like solve whatever their prediction task is.
Right, right. And I love what you said about how like the generalization here is not just for like a specific dating app or a specific pairwise matching between people. It's like it's more to like change the way we think about like personality science. Like if we had, instead of like maybe representing somebody as um like a Myers-Briggs or something like that, whenever we're conducting a study over like lots of different people, like having a high dimensional embedding vector for each of these people will allow us to extrapolate a lot more like interesting concepts than just like, oh, this type of person who has this specific feature is more likely to do this. Like we can actually like be more granular about what specific part of their personality is like, and it like encourages this behavior or like is more prone to this like disease or something like that.
Well, you can imagine that for almost any study, maybe even including like biomedical studies, that if it's easy to collect a fairly precise approximation of these personality vectors for like participants just by simply querying an LLM that they've talked to sufficiently long, and maybe like recording some video and like embedding that. If you can get like a high enough um, accuracy, like standardized vector, that you could that these vectors would probably encode all relevant information. So this is like beyond extroversion. This like might start to encode things about your current state of personal health, like lifestyle patterns. Essentially, if the task that it needs to solve is general enough that like all information about a person is required in the vector to solve that task. So the task I'm considering is like basically next frame prediction or like all behavioral prediction. If
Right.
that is the task that the model is trained to create a vector to like use to predict, um, that you might find that like in these biomed studies on like who gets diabetes, you know, or something like that, that there becomes like, oh wow, 3 of the 752 vector standard personality model we now have, 3 of these dimensions seem to be massively correlated with diabetes, and then we find out like One of them is related to a single SNP change, and then like two of them are related. One of them is related to like just a chronic sleep problems, and then a third one is related to like just a defeatist mindset, which itself is correlated with like maybe self-reported nihilism philosophy. And like you could like find these like specific vectors and do interpretability on them to say, oh wow, this vector is also like related to these things, and you could get to the roots of what's really going on rather than just saying, oh, it's like zero point 0.4 correlated with neuroticism, but who knows what that means? Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, I love what you kind of said about and this is also an interesting question, like in and of itself, which is like at the very end of the day, whenever you do like a clip style, or I guess I don't know the term we'll eventually use for this, like figuring out somebody's personality vector, but it seems like the
Unsupervised
approximation
training.
unsupervised training,
Yeah, yeah.
right, of like these personality vectors is like it might be a difficult like challenge in and of itself to like find out ways in order to probe this vector to try to like figure out with like more and more precision which direction we need to update this. And so I was interested about like your thoughts about maybe like which directions you see this going. Like, is it something where we download all of the information about this person from the internet and then we use that as like an input to a personality, or maybe something like an LLM, like their LLM chatbot feed, which you previously mentioned, or maybe something like completely different, like I don't know.
Yeah. So my thought is that probably the optimal vector is one that does what a lot of the other stuff does, which is like just predicting the next token. When it comes to videos, the next token is the next frame, frame including like audio. Maybe if we got into like like 3D models, or like 3D video scans, it would be like that. If you have text conversation of people, the next token. And the idea is that if you had like a video generation model or a large language model, for each of those modalities, they're generally trained to predict what the average human roughly would generate given the prior context, right? And so already an LLM is going to have some high quality score of predicting what you might say next in a conversation. In the same way, like, do you buy that number one? That like
Well,
if we have
I like personally, I don't know necessarily if I buy that. Although like there is a counterexample to this of like, have you seen the recent meta patent, the one where they something about using an LLM to like pretend to be people after they die.
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
have you
yeah,
seen this? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
the
feel like maybe
memorial type
that's
thing.
right. That's a very similar kind of vein, but I'm not sure like how much like input data you need to like create a meaningful personality vector from just like text. Like you would need quite a bit of text. And even then like you're missing a lot of like richness in terms of like what's actually going on for like people thinking in certain ways. But maybe this is like not necessarily a problem, and like just each word itself is like very indicative of like some specific personality. But again, I maybe that's like I feel like that's a little less likely than um or less promising than it might seem. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I fully agree with you that like there's reason to be skeptical that right now in 2026, um, this is not gonna like yield magical results. That like the Facebook like copy of your dead grandma is not gonna actually feel like your grandma at all. Um, what I'm saying is that there's a gradient here that, or there's like a performance quality that already could exist. Um, and how I describe that performance quality is that let's take like a conversation that you've already had with a friend on like Discord, um, and then I know like when it's you typing, um, and if we just have a normal LLM, it's going to have some performance quality on predicting your next token, right? Because what it'll do at
Right,
every
right.
token that you generate, it'll say the log likelihood of like the next thing. It'll be better than random, right?
Sure. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I agree with that.
Uh, And then you also probably agree that if I gave it additional context about you early on, prior to the conversation, as it's generating the log likelihood distribution of the next token, for example, demographic data about you or other conversations you've had, maybe even a photo of you, that this is likely to have some performance impact, probably positive, on predicting that next token, improving the log likelihood quality of estimation. Do you think that's also
Sure. Yeah.
true?
Yeah. Yes. I think it's likely, again, like I'm not sure. Like maybe you're going from like a very small percent better than random to like a slightly better percent better than random. Like I'm not sure. Like the effects are actually like non-trivial.
Do you think you could predict if like you had amnesia, that you could predict what you might say in a conversation that you forgot that you'd had? What do you think your quality of log
Ooh,
likelihood
actually,
estimates of your own next tokens would be?
I think this is actually like a very interesting question because like now that I'm thinking about this more, like in terms of the LLM prediction, like task problem, um, I think there might be like a you know how like whenever I'm talking to like maybe a podcast or you, I'm putting on some sort of facade, like something to like differentiate between like my true like personality and this. And it's very unlikely that like throughout your entire life, like of all the pairwise conversations you have with people, it's very rare that you actually see this like true personality of somebody. You're only getting a glimpse of like one dimension. And then there's obvious like implications with like code switching that you see in uh like different cultural environments. And so like maybe this like next word prediction thing has like a lot of biases that like might group lots of people together. Whenever you're texting somebody, there is also a tendency to um like match certain features with other people. Like this is a pro-social tendency, like whenever you copy other people's like behaviors. And so from even like a glimpse of like a conversation with somebody else, like you're getting me, but you're also getting them, and you're also getting like a whole lot of other variable factors of like maybe for this specific person I had like a bad interaction with them, and so now I'm like over updating for maybe like trying to correct that like problem or something like that. And so like even if you could like take an LLM, like I'm sure people talk to LLMs a lot differently than they talk to their like close friends or people like just that they meet on the side of the street. And so I think there's probably a more interesting way, or not more interesting, definitely not more interesting, but like a more approximate way to try to get that true personality instead of like just the glimpse that is talked to from the LLM. But
But
again, I could be wrong.
but what if instead this LLM was given a large corpus of not only your text output but your video output, and it had to use a single vector to add as a conditional vector to its next token log likelihood predictions. And this vector was used across all of your predictions, and kind of like grew out of that. And in this thing, for example, your degree of prosociality mirroring in different contexts would also be encoded in that vector for as an example. And this would help in as well perform better on the task of predicting how you talk to certain groups of people, because it would say how willing are you to code switch in different code switching environments. And so
Right,
then
right.
it could predict, and that would be also a vector of your personality, that would also probably be correlated with a lot of things. Um,
Yeah, this is yeah, I think I agree with that statement. But I would also hesitate to say that like you might get to a certain point where instead of like imagining that you're getting this true personality thing, you're instead like good hearting for these other metrics that are like how likely are you to code switch and some other things. But also I was thinking about another thing you said, which was the idea of like having a context window of like um your previous history or like your demographic data. And from my like very brief time, like I was in like therapy for like 2 months because it was free with my high school. Um, there was a conversation that came up about like how large events in your history are like very integral to your like future personalities and like the ways you act. And like this might be like a post hoc rationalization kind of thing, but like it also seems likely that like I mean you do Bayesian updately like subconsciously to like large events that happened in your past. And so there might be some promise towards like if you were to accurately report your like entire like history or your memory or something like the large events that happened in your childhood, that might be a predictive indicator of like some future personality stuff. Like if you were like abused as a child, or like if something like maybe you've never like had access to the real world and you lived in a bubble or something like that, this has like a very significant impact on your personality that like you might be able to see from like just like talking with somebody, but like you probably would get like a lot more context from like these larger events, and maybe those can be like like solid inputs for like the output of your vector for whatever you yeah.
My thought is that so number one, the task of predicting the next thing that happens in like a data set um, is like a relievingly simple one. But it does assume like a behavioralist model of human personality that says if this vector can predict what you're going to do, um, what's the difference between that and a personality than just
Right.
the thing that can predict everything you're going to do? Secondly, I'll say um, I'm approaching this as like asymptotically, which is to say that I don't think the future period is predictable, both in like a quantum sense, but in like a even in a deterministic universe, single universe, probably uh, it is not possible to predict the future with 100% accuracy, simply because of like the amount of information you would need to synthesize. We're probably not going to have the capability to do that, even if the universe is deterministic and it's a single universe. There's no multiverse splitting. But nonetheless, right now, Big Five has like a zero point 0.5 correlation with life outcomes. Um, and I think we can asymptotically approach something much better where, depending on the life outcome, we can get something like for certain ones, I bet we could get all the way up to like 0.95.
Hmm.
But for the ones that are a little more confusing, like what's the next dance move you're gonna do to extreme accuracy in a video, maybe like 0.7. But right now, Big Five probably would give like a 0.05 on that or zero point 0.1. Like I'm sure that has very little correlation with like current personality theories. Um, so that's number one, my thoughts on like those vectors. But secondly, yeah, the whole idea that early childhood experiences have a huge impact on your personality. This is actually one of the things I've been very interested in as like um, a thing to broach when trying to create these personality vectors is, could I get uh, the LLMs an onboarding experience for these apps where the LLMs know it's an active learning. Have you studied active learning yet? The
um
concept?
I like don't I remember concepts. I don't really remember names.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
why I'm so bad at
Okay.
history.
Let me onboard you to like active learning as a concept. So, um, let's say that like a model is initialized either at 0 or it's like pre-trained and you're fine tuning it. And you have a data set, and like anytime you're doing machine learning, you're basically trying to have the model learn a hypothesis over the data set to like achieve some task on that data set. Um, you know, labels for images could be one, or like time series like values for like stocks and stuff. um, and so you might just say to me, okay, Matt, so just like make the GPUs go burr, just throw that data set at it like a billion times if you want. And there's all sorts of scaling laws on like add more parameters, give it the data set more times. And of course, you need to like hold out some part of the data set for validation. You can't give it all of it, or else it's just either like overfitted on it, and then your results are meaningless. But forgetting all of that, or just having all that solid, what if I told you um, that actually sampling the data set itself is the thing you want to optimize as a cost? Um, and the reason for this is that sometimes the data set is not collected yet. It is in reality itself And an example of this is if the data set is all observations you could make about me, right? And there's no corpus for that, then your active learning problem is that you can ask me questions and talk to me, and each time you do, you get some small percentage of the total possible data set of interactions you could have with me to try to estimate my personality. And so active learning is the question on a minimal data budget. What is the optimal sequence to sample from a data set to converge on a high quality hypothesis as quickly as possible? Um, and so this is where you might imagine that in the data set, you could do things like embed the data set itself and look at the manifold that the data set lies on. And you would start sampling from different regions. And as you form a hypothesis, you would want to sample at boundary regions of that hypothesis until you started to really figure out where the rules are and where your things with the most impact would be. And so when you tell me about things like, oh, let's focus on your childhood, what I'm hearing is that's your solution to the active learning problem, which
Right,
is
right.
that those are the most efficient parts of the data set of like observations you can make about a person that converge on a general hypothesis that predicts everything else about them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's like the technological for the I guess psychological, like
Yeah, yeah.
technological explanation for the psychological.
And so my view is that the models themselves would actually learn, um, would solve this active learning problem emergently, and that probably what they would find is the same things that psychologists find, which is that asking about someone's parents is a efficient way to quickly form a hypothesis when you have like limited budget for sampling from that person. Um, but yeah, I think like a great thing that social apps and dating apps in the next couple of years are going to have to solve is the active learning problem, how to efficiently sample from someone. And I want people's LLMs to actually do this for us,
Right.
where
I
the
think LLMs
LLMs,
are a great solution. Yeah, 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 exactly. I mean, what we have right now on like Hinge and Tinder and stuff is just like at most a voice memo of like you answering a specific question or like maybe a text response or like maybe a photo, but like an LLM like having an active conversation with somebody can definitely like I was kind of like bearish on this idea before, but I definitely think that like with like these like active learning probe kind of questions for people's childhoods, I think you can definitely get a very solid like approximation of people's personalities like very very rapidly. And it's not even a question of like this is something you could do in parallel over like all the people using the app, like the LLM doesn't have to like sequentially find like, okay, this question is like, okay, is this a better question, like this sort of thing, but like if you have it working on like all the people or like who are using the data app, you can like very efficiently and very quickly find like these are the targeted questions that are good, that help me learn a lot about this person's personality versus like these other ones. And so
and you could
yeah.
even do a collaborative filtering on the active learning problem of these kind of people who answered these kind of things this way. If we ask this kind of question to them, we usually just reveal a lot of information. It's
Right,
very
right.
like
Yes.
information theoretic. Claude Shannon, like what is the question that could give the most possible surprise and reduce uncertainty as quickly as
Yes, yes,
possible?
yes, exactly. Yes, yes. Very
So
interesting.
so we've talked about the technical stuff, but part of this podcast is also getting people's dating life experience personally. You are a Zoomer. You're in 13th grade, freshman in college.
Yes, yes.
But you're also a mathematician and CS person, which is why you were able to already know so much of this ML theory and like stuff. But and you're from Texas. Is it like kind of a suburban part of Texas or?
Yeah, it's Keller, so it's near the Fort Worth area, but yeah, it is like a suburban area. Yes.
Okay. Um, so let's get into like your views on Zoomer dating. Like what is the current state of the Zoomer dating market? Do you think that like millennials pulled up the last like they like pulled up the rope behind them? Do you think boomers had it the best? How do you think your plight or fortune compares to that of other generations or of people in other countries? What do you think is the state of the world when it comes to dating? And what made you interested in this topic in general?
I mean, this is always like, regardless of who you talk to, a very interesting question about like what is the dating scene like, and like what are your thoughts on this? Because everybody seems to have very like different answers, and I feel like I also have probably a very different answer than like most people in my class. Um, it's probably not like as informed as some of the other ones because of I don't know, maybe just less experience, I guess. But I would I would say that I think people coming back from COVID are starting to like heal from those like distance like problems, and so I think we're definitely getting a more like a larger explosion into more pro-social behaviors and people being more like out there and willing to like do things.
You were
Um,
in middle school during COVID, right?
yes, yeah, that's correct.
Was this like seventh and eighth grade?
Uh, yeah, I think it was somewhere around there. Yeah, yeah, yes, it was. I think it was. Would say yeah, 7th or 8th grade.
Those are the ages of budding puberty. That's like when puberty begins. Um,
Right.
have you felt? Because I've talked to like several people who are like Zoomers, but a lot of them have been a bit older than you. Um, and their perspective on COVID was like, oh, my senior year of high school got messed up, or my, middle of college got messed up. So your middle school years were the ones that got kind of messed
Right.
up. Would you agree that they got messed up in some way?
Yeah, I think I would say that. I feel like for me specifically, and like I feel like I'm the only one who I'm not going to generalize to like everybody
Yeah.
here. Um, but I feel like I've had to be much more intentional about like how I approach like growing as a person and like going through these like stages of maturity, that probably would have like not happened if it weren't for COVID. Like I probably would have been more like intuitive, kind of like just got it naturally. um and so like that has like been in itself a challenge, but it's something that probably like a lot of people have, is like a tendency towards like being the person to pull yourself up in your own bootstraps, towards like being a more mature person, or being somebody who is like more willing to be out there and extroverted and stuff like that, being pro-social.
Do you notice a difference between yourself and people older or younger than you by some reasonably significant margin in terms of like social interactions, and maybe also like between yourself and like your same age cohort?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I think I've always been a person who is more comfortable talking to people older than me than people my age. Um, like this has been before COVID. This is like when I was really young, I would love like talking to teachers and stuff like that. And like my dating history has been a solid reflection of that. Um, but yeah, I think that's probably like a very significant difference, I would say. Is like just the people I interact with are like I was like, okay, for instance, like during my middle school years, I was I skipped like a grade, but it was like a partial grade, in the sense that I was like 2 years ahead in math, of like 1 year ahead in English, and like the same in like social studies and science, and then I like eventually built up enough credits to like skip a full grade. And not only that, but like with the +2 on like the math and the English, I was doing a lot of interaction with people like 2 years older than me. And so some of my best friends are like people in like, originally I would be like a senior in high school right now, but my like closest friends are people who are sophomores in college right now. And so like this has also been like fairly interesting too, is like I've always surrounded myself with people who are like a little older than me, and like the delta is like gets smaller, or like proportionally smaller as you age. Like people, somebody who's 2 years older is like a lot less interesting whenever you're like 60 than it is whenever you're like 13 versus 15, or 15 versus 18. But I definitely think that this has been like a big factor in my like growth as a person, which is like who you interact with is a big like influence on like your perspectives on dating and things like that,
Are
and your
you on
maturity.
any dating apps yet or right now?
Um, I am in the process of creating a Hinge profile, but it was for a very specific reason. I wanted to host like dinner parties, so I wanted to make like a gimmick account where I would just bring a random person in with my friend group to it. So it was more of a gimmick account thing. But I have like one of my best friends from Keller. She's like very active on dating apps, and she had like all of them. And she was like when I was first like thought of the idea of the like the dating app version of like embedding vectors. Like she was the first person I went to about this. And so she's definitely had a lot of experience on dating apps and like has seen all the positives and the negatives of things like Hinge versus Tinder being like more of a hookup app versus like Hinge, which is more personality, and like what dictates like a good app versus or like a good profile versus a bad profile and things like that. um, that like we now see people trying to like optimize with things like photo feeler and stuff like that. But like the best way to really get a good glimpse is to just like try a lot of them and see what sticks, which is what she is probably an expert at and what I would like ask for like help if I got on a dating app in the near future.
What do you think is the general view now of dating apps? Have we circled back around to it being icky, or do they now see it as just kind of useless? Or has it become like Facebook where it's like only old people are on that? Or what is the current view of dating apps?
I feel like most people I know aren't on dating apps, but this is also probably because I'm not on a dating app, and so like my selection effects are um like, and I'm probably not aware, even if they are on a dating app, I probably just don't know.
Don't talk
But
about it, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It seems like, especially in the university circles, or like the university circle I'm in, that like it doesn't seem to be like it seems to be like a tier less than like being like active in clubs in your community and stuff like that. That seems to be like the primary way to like find like relationships is like just being in the community and like finding people in classes and things like that. And this is probably like where you're gonna find the most success.
And is that
Um,
your personal thesis that you're not too worried? Number one, do you have as an explicit goal to get a partner, to get married, and or to have kids? Are any of those explicit goals in your mind?
yeah, I mean, like eventually one day I do want to like settle down and have a family. I feel like that's kind of like a something very concrete I can like send out into the world and be like my contribution, I guess. Um,
And what are you anticipating as like where you find the person to have a family with? Like, do you think that's going to be in college at a club? Do you think it's going to be some future tech that occurs? Like, what is your anticipation right now?
I think if I knew the answer to the question, I would be a lot more like comfortable. I don't know. W- like yeah, if I knew the answer to that, I think like my behaviors would change significantly. But like right now,
Significantly.
yeah, yeah, yes, yes. Because like okay, if you knew exactly where you would meet your life partner, you would like not do you would have like a very explicit goal. Like you would reduce all the uncertainty about like what things you need to do in order to like maximize the like odds of meeting this person. Um, but like as of right now, what I'm kind of been doing is like hedging my bets and like just like I'm going to do lots of things that I think would benefit me in the event that like I do like have a family, which is like get better at cooking or like be more responsible and things like that. Just like these minor things that like will probably compound later and like lead to very profound effects in the future. Like this is the best hedge that I feel like I can make um as of right now. Like but yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
There are like lots of I mean it's very interesting. Like there are lots of things you could say about like oh I want to meet somebody like volunteering versus I want to meet somebody like in a club or something like that. But it seems to me that like the most effective way of like the most effective aphrodisiac for like long-term relationships is just like close proximity with somebody and like have lots of like updates about who they are as a person and it is like an active learning task if you think about it, about who this person is and whether or not I want to spend the rest of my life with them. And so this is why you see like a like significantly more likelihood that you would be like interested in like a coworker or like a classmate or somebody you've had like lots of contact with, um purely because of this like proximity effect. Like one of the things I was reading about like Ayla and Nate whenever they got together for like every fit was like originally they had like no attraction toward each other like whatsoever. And it was like they had awkward conversations and things like that. But like just through proximity, like they found each other, like found like connections that they otherwise wouldn't have. And it seems to me that like maybe this idea that we need to find like a perfect person or like a perfect like soulmate is like a almost a fabrication from like globalization effects. Like now our sample size is so large that like we have this choice of like this person versus like some other people. And I think for me maybe I'm like influenced a little bit by like almost like decision paralysis in a sense. Like there are so many like interesting people and I don't know who I want to like be in a relationship with or who I want to like commit to for a while. I think this is a problem that has been plaguing me specifically for quite a while.
So, everything you just said feels like you were implying or directly stating some world models that about the dating market and compatibility that I want to probe and like get you to also like weigh in on other ones. So, here's one. Like, let's say there's all 7 billion or however many people are on Earth along a chart. Like, starting from like whatever, however you want to. Oh, ranked by compatibility, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that like the person you get along with least, like we can frame this in terms of expected value because I saw some of your blogs and that's like phrase you definitely like are comfortable with. It's like the expected value, and we can measure that however we want. But just like maybe a negative 10 through 10 rating you would give after interaction, and just like normalized. And like you would get to sample. So we're not doing any active learning efficiency. You're going to somehow in a time chamber get to meet every single person for an hour.
Hmm.
Or maybe even somehow magically spend 10 years with every single person on Earth in simulation. And you get like a value out of all of that. And like it starts kind of like down and then it's like negative and then cross into like minor positive and then like goes up. What is your view? Number one, does that even make sense to you as a world model that there exists such a thing as like a sorted list of like expected value of interactions with like every person on Earth, and it like looks like kind of this sigmoid or what would that kind of curve be? You're the math one. It's like exponential down and then
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
flat and then
yeah.
exponential up.
I don't know, like a
Um,
tangent curve or something like that,
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
something like that.
sideways.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Um,
anyway, is does that model even make sense to you
I think
as like a reasonable way to think about how the world?
I feel like that's fairly reasonable. Like I can't see a reason why that wouldn't make sense. Like the people who I am closest to, I feel like there's like they're orders of magnitude more compatible with me than people than just like my friends, and then like people who I'm not compatible with, like my friends are orders of magnitude higher than those.
Okay, so you
Um,
do believe in the exponential of increasing compatibility,
right? Yes,
the
100%,
exponential expected value.
100%.
Then you're also though you didn't really mention like a concept of a soulmate. You mentioned the concept of growing together. But does that imply that Nate and Ayla were not in each other's like top N on this like global ranking of expected value? And therefore, do you think that like how do you square those two concepts of like that it should be a coworker and it takes time and like look locally with the concept that like there is this like global sorted list of compatibility and like you get exponential gains from going into the rare percentiles, which would tell you probably you want to look very far and that the person who's your coworker is probably suboptimal even if everyone
Yes,
can
yes,
grow and
yes, yes, yes. This is like kind of the meat of what I'm getting at, which is that I think for pure like satisfaction, like you're happy with your partner. Like having less choices makes you subjectively feel like you've picked the best one out of the bunch. But with a sample size so large, like 100%, it becomes a like combinatorial like question of like which one is good. Like the only way to the most efficient way to solve it, I guess, would be like to like find a threshold, and the first person I meet that is like exceeds that threshold is like the person I should find. But I feel like for me specifically, that threshold kind of moves in like a no true Scotsman kind of sense. And so that's been my personal problem. But 100%, like
where
if
the
you are
floor
able,
gets raised as you get better and better friends.
yes, yes, yes. And I was like talking about this very recently at like my dinner party, which was like as you like it's kind of silly. Like as you become more and more like you do self improvement things, you become more and more desirable. Your subjective feelings about how you like about your like dating, I guess, stuff become like worse and worse because your expectation of like your quality your partner's quality has to like match your own in some sense. Like the restrictions you put on yourself. And it becomes a little harder to find people like that, or like the proportion of people who are like that relative to the people who like are now interested in you is harder, and so you're having a harder time searching for these people. And like again, this is like an arbitrary constraint as in some senses too, because like um if you got to know like any individual person, there's a high likelihood that like if you spend lots of time with them, you'll find these like niche interesting quirks about them as people that like will draw you to them and like make you like attracted to them in the end. And so I don't know, it feels like a kind of a thing where whenever you go into like a city and you have so many people, like it feels like everything would be so interconnected, but like you actually find the opposite where like people feel like more isolated and more alone. It's because they have so many options, but they lack the depth for each of them to find like whether or not they're like actually good or actually bad. It's like it's a decision paralysis kind of thing. So hopefully the personality embedding thing will be like pro the like deep personal connection kind of thing and not like a swiping model that like Hinge and Tinder pride themselves on, because these like seem to incentivize like the amount of options you have and not like the actual like connections you have with like each individual person. And this was actually part of like my original idea for I guess not so like I didn't really think of it like this, but I guess it very much fits in. Is like when I first like thought of the idea of these like personality vectors, like the and like a dating app relative to that. I also like came up with this like a different model of dating, which is that like the algorithm that we choose that like matches you with like somebody who's compatible with you is like it chooses a match for you, and you're required to be like give that person a chance for an extended period of time. And if you choose to like cut it off, then there's like some kind of time penalty associated with that. But like it prevents this idea where you could talk to multiple people at the same time, and you get into these weird dynamics of like it's not really cheating because you're not in an official relationship with somebody, but like you are kind of like playing at different people to sample which one you would prefer to be in a relationship with. Like I feel like this is a bad model, and this is like what leads to most of the negatives in like what we see in like modern dating, I guess, is like this idea that you can talk to multiple people at the same time, and this like makes you um less interested in any like particular person.
Yeah. I have two thoughts on that. The first one is that there definitely there's like it's a kind of like a cooperator defector dynamic where like um you want everyone else spending a lot of time evaluating you um to figure out like if you're a highly compatible option for them, but then you personally probably want to actually spend time defecting to accumulate more people evaluating you. You kind of want to use their compute for evaluating you while you use your compute for getting more evaluators. And
Right.
if there's a culture of like trying to accumulate more evaluators, then no one's actually interested in doing the evaluations because they assume that every person interacting with them is simply trying to accumulate low expected value evaluators rather than that, oh, this person messaged me because they put in computation to evaluate me and decided that I'm a high expected value and that they're willing to put in more time to continue the evaluation process. That like they're
Right.
allocating to me a low budget of in the active learning problem. They're allocating me a low budget. And if everyone thinks everyone else is allocating a low budget, then also you don't get very you end up just in a market that doesn't maybe doesn't clear. Like it does, no one ends up actually evaluating anyone long enough to find true positives even.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the big problem. Like you have to get lucky in a sense where you're like truly evaluating like one person and they're also like truly evaluating you in that same sense, right? Or
Another
maybe something similar to that. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
so so I've thought of that thing as well. That the idea that you should have this lock-in period. Like one match a day, for example. And one of the issues with technology is that what ends up proliferating is whatever is mimetic. Um, and like, do you think that that app is going to be as mimetic as, let's say you take that app, you clone it, and then you just give people two matches a day instead of one? Which one do you think people are going to use?
Well,
Um,
I think you can definitely like if that's the draw, there's like a non-trivial subset of people who are interested in these kinds of things. Like keep all the people who are interested in this mimetic, like lustful desire, like whatnot. Keep them on Hinge, keep them on Tinder, keep them on all these other apps. But for the people who are actually interested in like fostering these deep relationships, it seems that like this structure is aligned with their benefits. And so like even if you create something that has like two matches a day, um, I still think that like you're not gonna find a problem with people defecting to the other one.
and you don't worry that some desirable partners will nonetheless be victims of the mimesis of the mimetic app, and that it behooves you to go search for them there because they're less drawn to the one you've designed in your infinite wisdom of what the better app is. Um, that like the people you actually are targeting are just somehow not on there. You think like the people you want will also choose to like limit what they naturally desire,
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
feels
It
good
it
more.
it depends on your definition of like want, right? Like what do you mean by like you want this other person? Like is it that you're like compatible with this person, like super compatible with them? Because it seems to me that like somebody who is more interested in like mimetic like behaviors is probably going to be less compatible like on par with somebody who isn't. And so I don't know. But it is like an interesting question too. But I don't think it will cause defections. I would say like there's probably another person who exists who is like very similar on all of the things that you find attractive of this person, who is also interested in a longer, like more committed like style of dating that is like not as mimetic.
Okay, so we have a few other topics from your blog posts, and we're going to get into all the technical stuff. But first, you have a blog post called Valentine's Day Epiphany,
But yes,
which
yes,
is
yeah,
behind a paywall.
yeah.
So you don't have to reveal it all if that's like,
So this is for my blog. I wanted to do part of like a diary thing with like a personal diary where I write for myself and then like also like a public diary or like a public blog post kind of thing. And so this is kind of why I like lock some of these posts behind paywalls. It's because they're like more personal to me. And I figure that like either I gift my friends subscriptions so that they're able to read like my close friends subscriptions so that they're able to read them, or like if you're willing to pay like 5, 10 or whatever like money I put on there to read whatever I want, then like I don't care enough to not put it on there. But for this Valentine's Day post thing, um, it was very specific to this one problem that I had, which is that like whenever I get very okay, so whenever I get very close to someone, or no. When someone gets very close to me and they're like doing lots of signals to show that they're like very interested in me, and if I'm undecided on this person, what I tend to do, which is very bad and like I do not recommend, is like instead of just like sending them a message saying like, "Hey, I'm not interested in you" or something like that, or like even like just like doing some like distancing thing, what I do is like I pretend to be like an asshole in order to get them to like not be interested in me. And so this becomes like a thing of like instead of them thinking like, oh, what's wrong with me that this person doesn't like me, it becomes like, oh, I dodged a bullet. And so this has like
oh,
been helpful on me to like let people down without like actually letting them down,
is
I
this
guess.
like, galaxy brain IQEA way of like dealing with rejecting
No, I mean
someone?
it's like
You're
you
trying to
gotta be
reduce
careful
their
with it.
suffering.
Yeah, well, I mean, I mean, that's what I tried rationalizing it as because like I didn't understand it for like a long time, and then very recently I like came to the I like pieced together all the dots and I like connected it to this one I guess like my this one relationship I had where somebody like it was really bad. It was like 2 weeks and this person like love bombed me and then like I started to like have lots of bad like stuff happen like my grades started dropping and like I don't know I felt like depressed all the time and stuff like that and I just like couldn't take it but there was also some other factors that prevented me from just like strictly like stopping it because I mean there was like an implication of like an implied relationship there and so what I did was I just like started distancing myself and it seemed to work very well because like we took a break like almost immediately after. And so like this very sharp negative of somebody being very interested in me, like hyper interested in me, and then this very sharp positive of like, oh, you do this action where you like start to distance yourself and it works like perfectly. Like registered in my subconscious as like a very strong update in both directions. And so this leads to like a very adverse reaction whenever people are very interested in me and like a very positive reaction for the behavior of you should pretend to be a piece of shit in order to get people away from you, which is like a problem that I identified in that post and then I like am working on right now to try to fix.
That's interesting. Yeah. You've been traumatized by love bonding, so now like even the most mild amount of potential love bombing is like just instantly triggering to you and you
Right.
try to repel those people. Huh.
But I mean this also kind of ties back into like one of our first topics on this conversation, which was like these big events that happen in your like developmental things. Like this was like the first like real relationship I had. Um like have profound impacts that you might not fully interpret or you might not fully understand why you're doing the things you do because like for a while I just like interpreted my behaviors as like oh this is like an EA like less minimize suffering kind of thing to do and like but I really didn't understand that like this was actually something that was probably caused by like this this
It's
event
much
that happened, a significant
yeah,
event. Yeah.
much more emotional than like the post hoc rationalization you came up with.
Right. Yeah. And like I
Interesting.
wouldn't have known like for a while until like I connected the dots like randomly. And so like this is also like a very interesting thing, which is like a lot of times you don't know like why you do the things you do. And so even like naive ways of trying to probe like people's personalities like might be less rich than having like a long context of like I don't know, like a quote unquote like LLM therapist who like tries to figure out like your history and ties it into your future personality.
Wait, so you do think that the LLM therapist is better than
Yeah.
what
You've
alternative?
convinced me. Yes, yeah, you've convinced me within this thing that like it's a reasonable idea.
That the LLM therapist can do the active learning problem just by talking with you as a therapist, basically.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think if I had that, I probably would be like have figured that out probably a lot quicker, to be
Yeah,
honest. Or
especially because
maybe if I continue doing therapy from the school.
but this one you discovered like on your own introspection after learning it from the school, like the
Right.
kind of ways to introspect
Yeah. Or yeah. It
psychologically,
was
therapeutically.
yes. Yeah. I think so.
So it sounds like a fault. The thing I was gonna ask, but it sounds like this would not be relevant. Is like you don't have a model of the world that like you don't consider it a deep insult if someone who is a generally good person just kind of doesn't enjoy interacting with you. You don't consider that like damning or hurt damaging to you, right?
Well, okay,
'Cause
no, me personally, I do 100%.
you
I
do,
think
okay.
that I want everybody to,
Anyone who it could be a good person also ought to like you.
yeah, you ought to like me for like me. But if I'm putting on a character who doesn't, who is like unlikable, then this is like the edge case where I just ignore like this thing. Like you cannot like me if I also don't like you, I guess. But it's not really like a don't like kind of thing. It's just like a I don't know, some kind of subconscious thing. But yeah, no, I feel like I am fairly like I mean, this is also something I've had to work on for a while, which is like perception, like how I deal with like how I'm perceived by other people. It has a very large, like, it takes up a very large space in my mind a lot of the times, in which like it probably shouldn't.
On the topic then of dating apps, is your model of your future partner essentially best friend who I could also stand to be roommates with and I'm like attracted to?
Yeah, this
Is
is
it,
this
it
is this is the dream. This is the dream. Yes, 100%.
you think
Uh,
it's that simple essentially, or fairly that there's not
yes,
a qualitative difference between a friend and a romantic partner besides just it's a friend that I'll like cohabitate with and sleep with.
right. I mean, it's a little stronger than a friend, I would say, but I think best friend is definitely the direction you're going. Like it is on the friend axis,
Yeah.
um, and uh, yeah,
That's my model as well, but I've had people, I don't know what percent, let's say 20 to 35, seem to push back on that. And they say that a romantic partner is not a best friend. It is like, and it's not a best friend plus living together and like
I think that's a
being
cope
attracted.
personally. I
You
think
think, what is
that's a
the cope
mega
there?
cope. I don't know. I think that like there's a you want to be attracted to somebody and you use that to circumvent some of the like personality like flaws in other people, or like not compatibility flaws. You use like
I see.
oh, they should be like alluring or attractive, or like these other factors, or like they should be like high status or something like that, when this is like not as important of a dynamic. And like again, I don't know the actual studies or like if there's any empirical research on this, but it seems like with how high divorce rates are in America, like my parents are divorced, and this is something that I don't ever want to happen. I don't want to ever like have my kids like have to go through like divorced parent drama and stuff like that. Like I think that it's probably you'll probably find that like people who are best friends are a lot less likely to get divorced than people who are like
Yeah.
interested in these other factors. But maybe I'm drawing like a false dichotomy here. But
I'm guessing the literature also like proves that out if any
right.
exists. Yeah. It's probably not a controversial idea. Yeah. Um,
Or yeah, and then also one of the most powerful pieces of advice that my aunt gave me, which was like her marriage is like really great, and they've been together and they've been best friends, and like they've gone through arguments and stuff for like I think I don't want to get this wrong, but like I want to say like 35 years. I don't know. I don't want to say a number too high because that's like a little offensive if they see this. But like the fact that they've been able to like stay married for such a long time is like her entire reasoning for that is like you want to marry your best friend. And this should be like the one thing that you select for if you select for anything, is like to marry your best friend, because like whenever you deal with relationship drama and you deal with these like issues, you want to be approach it as friends first and then like spouse partner like later. Like that should
yeah.
be the way of approaching it. It's like you two against the world, not like you two against each other.
You know, I recently got married and my wife, she was actually the first person I dated whom I didn't want to date her at first for the explicit reason that I thought if we did it and then it like failed, let's just say like dating for a month and then we stopped dating, that it would mess up my chance of being her friend.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be her friend so badly that I didn't want a romantic relationship to mess up the friendship.
I mean,
Um,
this is a very common thing actually. Like this is probably the most common thing I've seen. Like it has its own term. Like um, actually no, that's a different term. But yeah. This is a very big thing. Um, Although I do think it is kind of like a fallacy in some senses. Like as long as like if two people truly are like super compatible together, like super good friends and like true friends, not like I'm friends with you because like I'm interested in getting with you. If the breakup, that like the potential breakup, which is like always the fear, is like if I break up and it's very bad, then we'll stop being friends. typically those types of relationships is like, oh, something external doesn't work out, and this is why, like, I want to stop being in a relationship with you. You get a lot more like amicable breakups in this way. There was like we weren't official, but like there was this talking stage that like I was very close to for a while, and like I just reached out to her like today talking about like a blog post thing, and like we were in like sort of a romantic thing, and like we're still remain friends like afterwards. And so this is like a very common thing, I feel like, is for me specifically, is like remaining friends with like people who I wouldn't naturally be friends with, even after like romantic interests have subsided.
Yeah, to me it seems like through a lot of the talk that your view is that you're just looking for friends in general. Um, my thoughts on all of this is that I never thought of this as a dating technology. I always thought of it as a friend finding technology, or even more broadly, like a person search, like a personality search. And like one of the use cases of searching for personalities is to find friends. And then one of the use cases of finding friends is finding someone to date and marry. And
Right.
like that the whole dating part is kind of just easy to, and when I tried telling people it's person search or friend search, they always say, "Oh, a dating app," and I eventually have to give in and just agree, yeah, a
Well, I
dating
mean, a
app.
dating app is like, I mean, okay, to be perfectly honest, like no person really wants to be in the situation in which they like have to be like actively searching for friends. Like they don't want to have to download an app for the express purpose of like finding friends, I guess. Like you're always doing it for some other reason. And then you find friends
You
as like
feel
a
like a
byproduct.
loser, kind of, and
Right.
also
Yes.
there's
But yeah.
there's kind of bad selection effects. Like, have you gone to meetup events, for example? I guess you're in college, so maybe not. That's kind of like a after college graduation way to meet new people,
I mean,
but
like the Austin Lessron group is kind of a meetup, I guess. Maybe,
no,
but yeah,
I mean like
I'm not sure what you mean.
meetup.com.
Oh no, I've
Um,
never heard of this.
that's like, I don't know. It's like, oh, come play pickleball with these random, 25 to 45-year-olds, in some, some city. And
Right.
like, this is like a way people after college basically start trying to make friends if they don't have enough already. Which in my opinion, no one I don't I think very few people until you maybe are like in your 40s have, in my opinion, enough friends. Because you can always like continue to probably accumulate more higher quality ones, even as you keep your old ones. Um, Most people should probably have like quite a bit of capacity for a pretty big amount of like interesting, world impacting friends. Um, but anyway, so then what social app would you be excited for, since it seems like your interest is more on the friend search, where like you think your dating problems will just eventually get solved through just optimizing for friend search. Um, what kind of friend search tools would you like to have, or friendship current friendship relationship current friendship relationship optimization tools where you're managing your current friendships? Have you thought
Sorry,
about this?
say the managing current friendships. What did
Yeah,
you?
have you thought about what technology you might want to exist that helps you either discover new friendships or manage your current friendship groups?
What do you mean by like manage your current friendship? I still don't understand like
Yeah, so
what
like
that.
you host these parties, and then you invite random people. You have to imagine that at these parties, there's different combinatorics of friends that
Hmm.
yield different quality of results for everyone, cumulatively. And that, as we're talking about this chart of expected value in these dyadic things between you and every person on Earth, what if instead we started saying, okay, what is the expected value if I have like a candidate pool of 55 people and I have to
Oh, I see
organize
what you. I
a
see what you're saying. I see
7-person
what you're
dinner
saying.
party. What is the optimal 7 people to invite to like create the most positive expected value across those combinations, right? Have you thought about that? Because
Yes,
that's
yes, I
another
have. Yes, I
social,
have. Yes,
it's
I
the
have.
same tech, right? Isn't that the
Well,
same
I mean,
exact tech?
it's not. It's okay.
It's
I
almost
I did
identical
not think of this
technology.
in like a technology sense, but there definitely are like game theoretic things you can do in order to
If you can
optimize
find the optimal
for.
soulmates, right? If you can create that list, then you can create it for social networks, like for
Right,
graphs.
right. Yes, I agree
And
that this is an application for this, but like specifically for like finding the best 7 people out of like the 50 or so friends that you have. I thought of like doing this. It's a very interesting challenge. It's a very interesting challenge because there's a psychological component and there's a game theoretic component to this. And what I originally wanted to do is like just like keep a mental tally of like who's the funniest person and who has like overall the best like utility vibes, in the sense that like you can't fake being like a good vibe for something. You can't like fake it, because like if you try to ruin other people's like chances of having the good vibe, then you yourself are ruining the vibe. And so this is like a problem where you have to like actually be good at this in order to like, I guess, be the best at having the best vibes. And so I thought it would be more like that, but it turns out that like my selection effects for my friends are solid enough that like no matter who I put in this room, like there are always going to be like interesting sub conversations that are going to be had with like different mixing effects with different friend groups. And it's actually been like very surprising to me, because like from going to like a regular public high school to like the early college program, like lots of my close friends from my high school, or my like public high school, whenever I introduce them to my friends from like TAMS, they mesh along like surprisingly well. And it seems to me that like maybe the people that I'm selecting for are just like really pro-social with other people I also select for. And so like maybe the neighborhood of this is like all compatible with each other. And so you find these like sub networks of people who are like very compatible with everybody within the sub network. And so like this might not even be like a big challenge. But like depending on how low your threshold is for the selection effect, you might find like varying results.
So it seems like you've already solved your problems of need. So you've already seemed to have solved your social needs without any technology,
Right.
just by going to UT Austin and then maybe like going to the right clubs and maybe just the way you interact. You kind of get a big enough funnel and then you also like prune
Hmm.
efficiently enough. Um, so then, what are you excited about in terms of being able to do this personality stuff? If you already feel like you've solved your personal
I
problems at
think I
least in this
think I
space.
think it's definitely the false negatives. False negatives is probably the best way to like benefit from this technology, because like I'm sure there's a ton of other people who I've yet to meet who are very interesting and very compatible with my friend group, but I just haven't been able to meet them because of my selection effects are maybe like too strict or too centralized towards a specific area of people. And I feel like this is a very like a great solution. It's like maybe there's an amazing friend group that like you're new to a city and there's an amazing friend group that would be perfect for you, that you could just like kind of like amoeba combine into.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
um
You're just
right.
visiting like, Milan, or you're visiting um I don't know, Annapolis, Maryland. Like you're just visiting some random city and like, oh, here's the three people that like
Right. I
are
mean, I
nearest
and
neighbors to your friend group in
yeah,
embedding
yeah,
space.
this would be perfect. And I think as like a whole, assuming you can get like an actually perfectly accurate estimation of people and you don't get like these like weird like serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer people who are really good at like pretending to be like a certain personality that they truly aren't. I think this will be very good for like human flourishing in general, in the sense that like we'll have a more trustworthy society of these people who are um like we already know by personality that like we're very similar, and so like I have a higher tendency to trust you because I know that you're like me. But like on the flip side, this also might lead to like more clicks, and you might see less like natural kind of connections between people. And so like there's like always a flip side to this, is like I was also thinking, like I prepared like a couple questions and we covered most of them, but like imagining the terminating conditions, I guess, for like this or like the end state after like a sufficient amount of time of this technology being like a real thing in the world. Like,
Yeah.
where do you see that like will happen if we are able to have this perfect detector of like compatibility, or like have this perfect way of searching through different groups? Like, do you think that we'll have like very high clicks, or maybe the like if we take specifically the dating environment sense, like do you think we'll have like problems where people try to like over optimize to be a certain type of personality, and we'll see like lots of like an optimal personality being created now that it's like more explicit, like which direction you need to optimize towards to get like the best possible candidate match? Or do you think that there will be like less of that, and instead like you'll see less behaviors of like self-improvement for like optimal pair selection, and instead people will be more likely to just like be themselves in the sense that like they're not trying to optimize for anything, and that because they have the certainty that their perfect partner always will exist and will always be like interested in them, they'll always have that like.
Yeah. Um, so my view on why loneliness has started to occur in society, and I do think there's like a lot of loneliness, is that what we used to have was like these kind of, a lot of people like lived in like smaller cities. Even if you think of like London at its peak was like 1 million people, that's still like way smaller than the cities we have today.
Mhm.
Where plausibly, and like also people didn't move, so like if you saw someone in London, you might see them again in like a week or two. You probably have the same butcher, at
Right.
least. Like the point is, we are so fragmented now in this, like you might never see the same Uber driver again, even though you like live in the same city. Um, and so we get these lack of norms culturally around how to interact, and also just there's like more reason to kind of semi-defect socially, or at least to not go out of your way to cooperate because there's no expected value from that.
Right,
For
right. I wanna
further,
oh, yeah, yeah, sorry,
no, go
continue,
ahead, go
continue.
ahead.
Oh, like, I wanna say, like, yeah, this is also, like, part of the reason why, like, it's very tragic, but, like, recently there's been, like, several shootings in Austin, and I feel like this is something, like, not even, like, talking about, like, the culture war politics of, about, like, gun control and stuff like that, but, like, there's a lot of, like, barriers in place for like small communities or like tight knit networks to not have these like defectors who go around and like shoot people or do these like very bad crimes and stuff like that. Because if you know everybody, there's no incentive to defect. But continue your point. Yeah, I
And
just wanted
if
to add
you
that.
own a shop in downtown Austin, you can get a microcosm of someone doing that, which is someone just behaving badly in your store, and anyone can walk in. Um, So this is the issue, I think, in modernity, is that we end up where if you go out into society, and like right now I'm in London, but you're in Austin. Point is, both of us right now probably have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that we theoretically could interact with in the next 10 minutes, um, drive to each other. That's a huge candidate pool. And further, guaranteed we could just walk out our door now and both be talking to someone we've never met within 60 seconds, right?
Right.
Um, within 60, guaranteed we could both do that. What is the expected value of going out and interacting with someone? And my view is, with the combination of this lower trust culture due to lack of iterated prisoner's dilemma, lack of, because remember, the game theoretic optimal strategy when there's iterated interactions is more cooperation, and also less penalty for defection, like a more assumed positive intent. Whereas if there's only single interaction, defection becomes optimal. And a lot, if you get one Uber driver, the only thing that makes it iterated at all is that you can leave a rating. But if this is why taxi drivers used to be awful, is that there was no
Hmm.
iteration, and so the best move for them is to defect. And so then you get people in that environment who, they end up thriving and flourishing from being defectors. um, so my point is that there's this crazy thing where there's also just social compatibility that is a factor. And again, you and I are right now have like a candidate pool of maybe 100,000 people. No joke, we could talk to in person in the next 10 minutes. Like you just start walking towards them towards you. Your radius is probably 100,000 people. Mine too, maybe even more, being in London. And the expected value of most of them is like slightly negative,
Right.
or slightly positive. But then, even if it's slightly positive, my alternative is like things that are higher expected value, like me working on something I'm interested in, even me just watching a TV show I prefer,
Hmm.
me eating something I'd rather eat than interacting with someone where it's like the expected value is just very minimal. Um, and to me, the great tragedy of all of that is that if you're like in a rural village, your top, N or K selected candidate for expected value is like, one order of magnitude above baseline, maybe two. Whereas if you're in the megalopolis of London or mini megalopolis of Austin, Texas, if the like of your top ranked person of compatibility that you could literally drive to right now within 10 minutes, it's like 4, 5, 6 orders of magnitude above baseline, but you can't find them. There's no search tool to find them. And
Hmm.
so my point is that I think the loneliness crisis is because people's expected value of interaction is actually slightly negative, or at least lower than the trade-offs. Um, and this is what, and so people just mimetically are not incentivized to go out and interact, and so they become lonely. And then you get people like you and I. Maybe we have thicker skin, and so negative interactions don't bother us as much. Maybe we've created environments for ourselves where we're insulated from like a negative expected value of interaction with the people we do interact with and get as new candidates. And maybe we're also just better at navigating social interactions where we curtail it so that the negative value doesn't compound as we can't escape an interaction. Whereas
Hmm.
some people maybe are too polite and they can't escape interaction. And so the cost for most people of interacting with strangers socially is quite high, and maybe the only reason it's not as much for us is because we've escaped that, and also maybe we don't interact with strangers quite as much as we interact with like new people from an already curated group. And so
Right.
I'm only trying to create a technology that makes people less lonely by selecting for them in a high dimensional way, um, those people that they literally can walk outside and talk to. But like if you're in an apartment building, the randomly selected neighbor is not worth talking to, but the best person in your apartment building for you is definitely worth talking to. And why can't I just pair you guys up to go talk?
Right.
And
Right.
it seems like amazing technology, like a world where that happened. And to your point about what would that world look like, I think we would get a lot more what people call bubbles. But it would be like these positive bubbles. It's what people already gravitate towards on the internet. You get these bubbles where people actually like each other. And one of my views is how this might be good for society rather than damaging is that I think if you look at society as like why do people invest in a society? It's actually mostly because they have like family and relatives they love that are in that society. And so they love the city because their family is in it, and they want to make the city better because of the small group of people that they love in that city. And so my view is that if people have, all you need is one best friend, but if you have a few friends in your city that you like, you're going to be generally pro-social in the city because you actually care about that city, and because you now see yourself as connected to the social fabric. And so even if people end up in these little mini bubbles, um, I think it's actually better for society that everyone feels invested because they have at least 2 or 3 people they really like in that
Right.
megalopolis.
Right. Yes. No. 100%. I agree. Um, I will push back on one small point though, which is like if you think about that expected value graph and like most interactions you'll probably have with people are like maybe slightly negative or maybe slightly positive, but marginal enough that like the opportunity cost of talking to them is probably less than some other action you could do. I want to push back on that idea very slightly because I believe that like there is some agency that you have in order to change that dynamic, right? Like you can become like a lot more pro-social. Maybe lots of people might have different difficulties in doing this, but it's actually like a graph that you can like transform vertically or like negatively depending on like what type of like I don't know like circumstances and like just like personal self-improvement kind of stuff. And so we also want to like make sure that like if you pair two like if let's say this technology exists and people do have like these perfect matches, we want to like also make sure that like two random people who have to interact for like getting coffee or something like that, like these people or like yeah like a barista and like a somebody like a customer or something, we want to make sure that like people are still like improving their expected relationship for people not in their clique. And so this is the only problem with cliques. Is like yes, they are like very beneficial, but also there might be some tendencies towards like an out group of like everybody the complement of my friend group. And maybe I'll treat all of them as negatives, and this maybe is like slightly antisocial. And
Yeah.
so like as long as there's a way to like correct that, which there probably will be, or we just need to like make sure that that could be a concern with the invention of this technology. I feel like that's the only caveat that I could presumably see as like being an issue in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you did mention that like the way you're preparing is, learning to like do the dishes and stuff. This is kind of uh raising the entire graph up, in the y-axis. Like we're just
Right.
all
It's
interactions will
it's
be.
it's not even that, but I there was something that's like very interesting um to me, which is that like a lot of it is like not really an active, or it's not really a passive change, it's more of an active change. In the sense that like you don't actually have to work on yourself that much. It's like literally a psychological change in like how you view other people or how you view yourself relative to other people. Um like last semester versus this semester, there's been a large delta in my like social interactions with people. And this is because like I'm gonna come up with a post hoc rationalization, but like you'll understand the intent, which is that like maybe from watching TV shows with like antisocial things like Dexter, you start to like have these like thoughts of like, oh, maybe like I'm less social than I seem, and you it starts clouding your thoughts, and you get like artificially bad at social interacting. And then over winter break, I like got to interact with some friends who I haven't seen in a long time, and like um yeah, and like these things where I realized like, no, I'm actually not like antisocial. It's just like I was just pretending, and then I could just like flip that on like an instant and just interact with these people who I typically like before would have been conditioned into not interacting well with. And so like there's a very easy like personality shift, or like a um world model shift that you can do to like just raise the expected value in general over all people. And it's actually like not a difficult change that you can make. Yeah.
Yeah. I think some people's intuition is that if you get social groups that are too that like have too specific of a flavor to them, or like you could even describe it verbally as like a matrix of like behavior and like multipliers that are is like too idiosyncratic that as someone becomes more liked by a certain in group, especially a very specific one, they become less likable to the general public.
Hmm.
And I do think that there's probably some traits where this is the case, and maybe even some social groups where this is more pronounced than other social groups. Some social groups could be part of their like whole thing that unites them is disliking out groups. But my view is that generally, probably in the aggregate, the effect of people being around friends they like will make them more likable in general and pro-social in general than the effects of becoming a more specific person
Right,
will
right.
make them less. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that is the future I see. I also see a future where like your Uber driver, after we've selected for all the other things, we select for one that you're most socially compatible with,
Hmm.
as like a application of the technology. Or if you're in a League of Legends matchmaking lobby, that not only do I pair you with people that you'd play well with based on your elos and performances, but like if there's still 100 different team combinations I could give you at that time, why not
Right,
also pair you
right.
with people you'd like to talk to?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, yeah. I think the trouble with what I just brought up was the fact that like you're treating it as a binary. Like these are people I'm connected to versus these are not people I'm connected to.
yeah,
But the real way you should treat it is like, or and this is something that happens whenever you have an asymptotic graph like this. Is like there's a pretty distinct thresholds. Um, but like really what you should be thinking about is like a gradient of like, oh, these are people who I'm more compatible with versus like less compatible with. And like even though that there is like exponential growth, like it's not like insanely profound where it's like a like almost like a square wave kind of thing. Instead it's more of like it's maybe less sharp, but like there's still pronounced effects between the tops and the bottoms. And in the sense that like this will 100% help like matching and like Uber drivers and stuff like that, because like if you think of it as a gradient where this is like the best possible compatible Uber driver with me, you're also a lot more likely to have a positive interaction too if you know that the person you're interacting with is like somebody who you get along well with. You're more, your buy-in is less because you know that like they're likely to reciprocate.
yeah. Also, given that we'd have the vectors, it's almost certain that probably you can generate advice for each person to optimize any interaction, including with
Right,
people who,
right.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like you can probably find between me and a stranger where even our average expected value is probably slightly negative, that like you could engineer what each of us should open the convo with that like determine that like semi-deterministically ends up in a
Right.
fairly
Yeah.
like we juice the most out of the interaction, get the highest positive expected value.
Yeah,
So
yeah. This is a
there's
neat application. Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many applications to being able to have like high dimensional personality vectors. Okay, so on to the rest of your research. As our penultimate thing, I'll leave it open to you, but you have your cops and robbers work that you're doing.
Right.
You have your calibrated bets arbitrage. That was interesting. You have your interest in super forecasting in general. And then maybe the most obvious one to start with also is your EV dojo work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like probably there's like a lot of ways that EV Dojo could work for social interaction. And maybe since you're at an age where like honing your social skills is like a constant feedback thing, or at least you're just
Right.
leaving the age where I think developmentally that's like key is like 13 to 18. But like you must have in your mind what it would look like to have an EV Dojo for social interaction. But you have the cops and robbers, EV Dojo, calibrated bets, forecasting. What are your thoughts on those as they relate to like personality
I
vectors?
don't exactly remember what I meant by calibrated bets somewhere, but I'll ignore it for this one. So in TAMS you have access to lots of research, and like this kind of influenced my direction towards like more enjoyment of mathematics was like cops and robbers research, because it's like a game theory kind of game that was like very tangible, and so there was lots of like stuff to be made, and it kind of like opened me up to like academia and like the possibilities of doing like interesting work in math or like computer science that is not explicitly like a thing where you just like have a data set and you're trying to like understand trends of the data set, and like just the general average like machine learning paper slop that you'll find. And so this kind of opened my mind up to like this is like an interesting problem, and like maybe this is the direction I want to go towards. um
What is
ev
the problem?
doge Oh, the cops and robbers.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a game where you have it's a capture evasion game, where you have a series of like pursuers, like the cops, and like a robber, and you want to find strategies that like both people can take to see what the relative number of cops you need to a specific robber that has some sort of advantages. So
Like speed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The speed is the what we did. We did like a 2 speed robber on like a Manhattan grid, so like a city grid. Like how many you would need if it's like finitely sized, and like how many cops do you need relative to this scaling of the grid. And it's actually interesting because like if you have 1 speed, you only need 2 cops in order to like capture a robber. But like as you increase the speed of the robber, it actually becomes dependent on the size of the graph.
Does the
So
mathematics become very similar to late stage chess game strategy? Because in late stage chess you have like these pieces that have different ways of moving, and you need to triangulate to eventually corner the king.
yeah, I think
Um,
it started like that. Yeah, yeah, like the cornering strategies and like herding and stuff. But we got to a fairly yeah, yeah, yeah. The cornering was very similar. What we got to for we found a reasonable, I think, upper bound. No, sorry, lower bound on the hmm, no, I think it was upper bound. I don't know. It was like a year or something ago. But we found a reasonable upper bound where you could guarantee the capture on a specific size board using this strategy of like pattern matching, but like with lines instead of a singular cop for each direction. Um, but the actual interesting problem was like finding a strategy that can guarantee evasion for a robber, like the other bound, I guess.
yeah.
And this is interesting because you have to ensure that you can like never get captured. And so what does that even mean? Like, does that mean like circling around the graph and like getting back to the same point? Or like, what metrics do I use to ensure that like I'm not getting any worse in a specific direction? And these are things we like talked about and I argued with lots of people about for a while. But it was fun. It was overall fun. And I love all the people working in the UNT math department who like
That's
helped me
great.
with this. Yeah. Um, But I love the I think more interesting than that is like the EV Dojo thing, which actually came from an Ayla blog post, surprisingly, out of all places, um, where it was for a hackathon, Hack Texas, where the idea was that you want to be there are lots of different systems that exist that you don't have like good feedback loops for, right? And you presumably want better feedback loops, and these feedback loops do exist, like in the sense that you could hire a coach to get you better at playing the piano, right? Or like get better at these other things, but like maybe not for things like interviews where the only signal you get is like if you got the job or didn't get the job, but you also don't get why or anything like that. And so presumably there should be ways of like improving these specific things that you might have unsupervised learning for, like a general task of figuring this out. And so it was really interesting because it was my first time vibe coding a project for the hackathon. I was like a solo team. Uh so like it was just me working on the project. It was me and ChatGPT like working on this project together, like designing a whole lot of stuff. And so yeah. Um I feel like the idea was like fairly promising whenever I started working on it, but then I feel like right now I get distracted very easily with lots of other new things, and I want to find something that like I really enjoy before fully committing into it. And so maybe, yeah. Um, and then what was the last one?
Um, you had forecasting, and then you're,
Forecasting. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I just basically I read Philip Tetlock's book, Super Forecasters. I thought it was very interesting, and so I started a community here because there wasn't anyone. But hopefully that'll start up um, soon next semester. Like it's a small thing right now, but hopefully we'll get more people.
And then you also had a post on that people should like that if you have an expected value for a thing, and then you and someone are negotiating um the payoff, that you should like undershoot what you should like underrepresent what your expected uh odds of that thing are, which seems
Yeah, yeah.
intuitive to me.
Right, it's intuitive, but it's like one of those things that like you could pull the trick on somebody, and if they're not thinking about it in this framing, then they're likely to get like got by it.
The
And so
trick
like
doesn't
I've
work on me because I can always tell like that someone is underrepresenting what their actual odds are on a thing.
mhm.
I'm always like, the way the odds you just told me are different from how you were just discussing this thing.
Right.
Clearly, because usually here's what happens: you were advocating that basically, number one, a person's not starting to make a bet unless they think that a thing is different than what the general consensus is. That's when you actually
Mhm.
get value.
Right.
And yet, you're advocating that if someone thinks that, they should try to negotiate to get the odds on the general consensus value. And that the odds that they should advocate for are to get the general consensus odds on that thing, even though they think the odds are much higher, right?
Yeah, 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 yes. Yes.
That you basically want to represent that, like, oh, I think the odds are slightly higher than what the average person thinks, even though you wouldn't take the bet unless you think it's much higher than the average person thinks, or much lower.
I think that was similar to what I was saying. I was specifically talking about the case where like two people disagree on something, like some binary case, right? And so like person one can ask the second person, "What do you think the odds are of like your thing?" And obviously they're probably going to say something greater than 50%.
Yeah,
Because like otherwise why are you arguing for this
yeah,
if you're
yeah,
not? And like by asking the follow-up question of like, okay, do you want to do like a weighted bet on this on your number? This is like a bad thing. This is like equivalent to like the Facebook marketplace strategy of like not being the first one to like give a price for something.
yeah,
Because if the other person is like better deal, you always want to take theirs.
yeah. No, so my point is, often people then will offer me odds that are essentially the same as what the general consensus is, and I say, like, you wouldn't have been excited about this if you didn't think that it was very different from the general consensus. So
Right, right, yeah.
yeah, it was interesting though that anyway, okay, the final thing we usually discuss on this podcast is we're living in an exponential time for tech. Um, and, this means that sufficiently advanced tech can be indistinguishable from magic. So if you indulge yourself in a bit of magical thinking here, um, what is a magical technology that could be created in the next couple of years? A social technology, right? Dating or social in general, that if it was invented, you would instantly sign up to be a user of that technology.
This is a tough question, I guess, to just like brainstorm out of the blue. Like
It can be magical.
okay, okay.
You can make it yourself. Think of something as magical as you want until it finally is a thing that you're confident you would definitely use that and it would solve a problem you have.
I think there's a we were talking about like at a recent Austin Less Strong meeting about like what the world would be like in the case of like if nobody was able to lie. And this has been an example that has been like um touched on by like Hollywood movies and the like. But I think being better able to understand what people are thinking would be very beneficial to like society as a whole mostly. I mean they're like obvious edge cases and you could very easily like contrive an example in which this would be like like a catastrophic thing. But I think like any app that like any magical app, I guess, that like has some ability to make the world a more honest place. Or maybe a more honest in the sense of like what you're thinking so that the other person can like understand that's where you're at and then form opinions or do things based on this would make the world significantly better and like more pro-social. Like maybe something where like it's a neural link chip in your brain that like gives informative thoughts about like, hey, I'm having a really bad day right now to like the other person, or like something that like records like maybe it's not even conscious, it's like a subconscious thing. But in general, I believe that like for me specifically, if I'm having a disagreement with somebody, I believe that like I'm never going to be mad at somebody if I understand the reasons why they do the things that they do. Like if you do something and it makes logical, rational sense, there's no reason for I can be disappointed. I can be like mad at myself or I can do all these other things, but I can't be mad at you if you're always picking the best possible decision. And the problem with this just in general is the fact that like people have asymmetrical information. Um, you could have some knowledge about something that makes an informed decision from you, like a rational decision for you, look like an irrational decision from me, and that makes me mad at you. And I think if we were able to solve this problem, I feel like it would be very beneficial to societies and very beneficial to things like relationship drama or like even getting to know people. And then you also have rapid like updates for information. It's like if I'm coming off as like too strong or if I'm coming off as like a little weird or if I'm coming off as like a whole variety of things, like just getting that feedback when you otherwise wouldn't, because we live in a kind of a society where giving that feedback is kind of looked down upon. I feel like this could be a very like very positive thing and a very neat thing for people to improve.
So three technologies that come to mind as form factors, going from primitive to more advanced. The first one is just a computer vision model that is like a very high accuracy lie detector. How would you feel that would solve some of this problem? If just everyone,
Because I
they
don't
had
think
Meta Ray Bans, they could just always tell when someone's essentially lying.
I don't I wouldn't think that would help. And the reason why is because like you want actual information and not that like they're lying. That'll just leave you mostly unsatisfied with whatever answer they're giving. Like if you tell me
Yeah,
something and it doesn't make sense and I know you're lying, that's like that makes me even more mad.
yeah.
Um
We're not
or
getting social, but
if
maybe I'd lie less.
right, or even if you say something that's like the truth and it also is unsatisfying and like I don't think it's rational, then like I'm still going to be left unsatisfied. So I don't think this is like like
Okay.
a good solution to the
Second one, more also augmented reality, like social. social parsimonious hypothesis generator for social interactions. It kind of comes up with here's like here's like a kind like a what is the word for it? It assumes the best case scenario that is still plausible for why a person is acting away and helps you on the fly generate hypotheses for, some people do
I
this
think
manually. They're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
that
Okay,
person's
I see
having a
where you're going.
bad,
I see where you're going.
yeah.
Yeah, I think this could be reasonably useful. It would definitely give a lot of people more grace, and I feel like giving people grace is something that is like very underrated in like today. And I feel like any technology that allows people to like come up with these different ideas for why somebody could be doing the things that they're doing is probably more social, because like then your response is like conditioned on what you think that other person is doing or what's likely for that. And I feel like these will always be more like gentle or like caring responses than like immediately getting angry or like, other problem.
Well, this sounds like an EV Dojo social feedback tool, that
Right.
one.
Yeah.
Okay, the final one that I've been thinking about is imagine like right now or even before this convo, your agent and I don't know where you talk a lot like ChatGPT, Claude, that yours and mine go into a private execution session and they bring in everything they know about us and they can rag it in if they need to. And then they just talk to each other almost like our lawyers, figuring out what we have in common, what we don't, what we're likely to disagree about, what we're likely to like to talk about with each other. And then we both have like conditional things that we're allowed to reveal to the other person on a certain condition. And then a third LLM evaluates after they've talked what conclusions they've reached that we can have escape containment and go out to each of us to say, you guys should talk about this, maybe don't talk about this. Here's what you should know about each other that they might not reveal to everyone. And then we each get that before a social interaction. What do you
I
think about
think I
that?
think in a perfect world where that like works 100% of the time, this is like a great technology. And if it's magical and we can guarantee alignment for these things, then that's great. But
What do you
as
see as the
somebody,
pitfalls? Yeah.
I mean, the pitfalls is it starts becoming like you are the person doing the decision making versus like you're offloading that to a large language model. And people will like, obviously there's a group of people who will probably be like more vigilant about not like exactly taking what they have to say and just like going through with it. But I feel like a lot of people will just like do the thing that like the LLM says, and this will be like an automatic response kind of thing. But I think like giving more capabilities to the LLMs in that sense would be like great if it works perfectly. As somebody with the like Austin AI, or like the like AI alignment group in UT, there are some like hesitancies I have with like giving these kind of technology thing. But if it works perfectly, it works perfectly, and I think it could be a reasonable solution to this.
Is there anything else as we wrap up here you want to say about dating or relationships or personality or AI in general to people?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the best thing that like I would say, most of my advice that I like giving to people, I really should be giving to myself. And I think the advice that I would give is like stay informed, but also like stay positive, I guess. That like there's gonna be a lot of change happening in the near future, and like hopefully some of the cool inventions like the relationship singularity will be like the awesome byproducts of this. But we also need to make sure that we're like also careful and aware of their potential like downsides and their potential like things like even the niche things that we were talking about with the like potential for clicks to form that like causes antisocial behaviors and tendencies, and like some other things. Like we should always be aware of these like other externalities that could happen as a result of these technologies before we go ahead and create them. And so conversations like these are very beneficial, and like I think for like instead of just like yeah, I think people should be having these conversations with lots of other people who they think are informed and uninformed, and form their own beliefs from those.
Um, if people are interested in talking with you after seeing this, how should they get in touch?
Um, I write on Substack. My Substack is amateur, with my like pseudonym Everett Hunter. Um, that's like a good way. I think there's like a chat feature in Substack, which is probably like where I'm going to be probably the most active, even if I don't post regularly. It's probably the best way to get in contact. But yes,
All right, Hunter, thanks so much for being on the podcast. And
thank you so much for having me. This was a great
yeah.
time.